So I am on this panel because I live on the left and quarrel with some of my neighbors, as I will do this afternoon. I also have, over many years, had disagreements with Robbie George, but not today. I am old enough to remember arguing against the very first Israeli settlements on the West Bank, in Hebron and near Nablus. I didn't win that argument, or most of the others in the years since, but that's an old story on the left. There are two lefts engaged today in what we might loosely call Middle Eastern politics. The first, the familiar one, is a left whose members are committed to defend people in trouble wherever they live, to oppose oppression wherever it occurs, to promote self-determination for everybody, to fight for greater equality. Well, you know the list. And the second left is a single issue left focused on the Israel-Palestinian conflict and committed to the criticism and delegitimation of Israel. This second left, in the style of the left, I'm going to be polemical today, so I should stop here and say that I understand that there are good people on all sides of these issues, and that my polemic is addressed against the politics of divestment and not against the people. This second left pretends to act in solidarity with the Palestinian people, but I want to argue that that is not its primary commitment. Indeed, it's not a serious commitment at all. But the resolution in front of you, that you will be voting on very soon, isn't focused only on Israel. It condemns Egypt, too, and the Palestine Authority. It's a very odd resolution, since it invites the question, who should Israel negotiate with? To whom should Israel return the West Bank? The only organization left standing in this resolution is Hamas, which is, in terms of brutality and oppression, the worst of all. Its members are Islamist zealots, religious misogynists, and political terrorists. The resolution, however, is camouflaged. For if we look at the actual position paper on the divestment website, the paper called Why Divest, we won't find any mention of the Palestine Authority or of Egypt. The siege of Gaza is called there the Israeli siege. But it really is a joint effort, an Israeli-Egyptian siege, and either side can end it at any moment. If Egypt opens its border with Gaza, there is no more siege. And at this moment, after the attacks on Egyptian soldiers and civilians in the Sinai, the Egyptian side of the siege of Gaza is much harsher than the Israeli side. So one would expect that if the divestment activists had any serious interest in the well-being of the people of Gaza, they would be working to promote opposition to both sides of the siege. But as Why Divest, the position paper makes clear, they are really interested in only one side. Consider now the Syrian civil wars, in the course of which Yarmouk, the Palestinian neighborhood in Damascus, has been devastated. It is probably true, I'm not sure of the statistics, but it is probably true that more Palestinian non-combatants have been killed in the last 4 years in Syria, chiefly by the Syrian army, than in the 48 years of the Israeli occupation. So, I found on the website of The Guardian, the English paper, left paper, a blog by a man named, who I don't know, named Mehdi Hassan. Mehdi Hassan is an Anglo-Indian, a Shiite Muslim, who writes regularly for Al Jazeera and who is a fierce critic of Israel. But he is a member of what I call the first left. So listen to what he says. Anyone who tries to use the tragedy of Yarmouk to excuse or downplay Israel's 48-year occupation of Palestine should be ashamed of themselves. Okay, I make no excuses for the occupation. But Hassan goes on, what about the rest of us? Can we afford to stay in our deep slumber, occasionally awakening to lavishly condemn only Israel? Let's be honest. How different, how vocal and passionate would our reaction be if the people besieging Yarmouk were wearing the uniforms of the Israeli army? Our selective outrage is morally unsustainable. And he goes on, many of us who have raised our voices in support of the Palestinian cause have inexcusably turned a blind eye to the fact that tens of thousands of Palestinians have been killed by fellow Arabs in recent decades, and he then provides the long list of killings. So, Hassan is talking about the second left, the divestment left, which takes no interest in Palestinian suffering unless Israel can be blamed for it. And Hassan is right. That is a morally unsustainable left position. But here is an organization at Princeton University trying to sustain it. So let's imagine a divestment campaign sponsored by the first left, the authentic left. How would we recognize it? First, it wouldn't be the only thing that the left was doing. Israel would not be the only country in the world that it was worrying about. And second, any decent left would proclaim from the beginning its commitment to self-determination for both the Palestinian people and the Jewish people. It would defend the statehood of all the people in the world who need a state. Tibetans, Kurds, Palestinians, and yes, the Jews too. That would be a left politics. And if a divestment program focused narrowly on the occupation were part of this politics, we would have to think very seriously about supporting it. I'm not talking about supporting it at the university. I'm talking about politics outside the university, which is the proper place for left politics. We might argue about the possible effectiveness of a divestment campaign, but it would have a kind of moral legitimacy that the current campaign does not have. Please stay away from, join the opposition to the current campaign. It is morally unsustainable, so make sure that it is not sustained. And if any of you plan to live on the left, as I hope some of you do, then fight for the better left that we really need. Thank you.